Hi greedy 3Ders. Now today's episode is going to be a little bit different from what I normally do, and it's going to be a little bit longer, so I apologise in advance, but I hope you get out of this video some tips or some hints, because today I'm going to show you how I painted this. This is the Black Widow model from Wicked, but I'm going to concentrate on how I painted the eyes, the lips, the face, the skin tones. So it's going to be a bit of a tutorial video, and hence it's going to take a little bit long to go through everything, because I don't want to miss anything out. So if you want to know how to paint faces and you want to try to get up to a reasonable standard, then I hope this video helps you. Now please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. That really does help me. And also don't forget that if you want to buy some paints or airbrushes or bits and pieces, there is some information regarding where you can get these from in my description, and anything you buy a little bit goes back to the channel through an Amazon affiliate link. So hope you enjoy it. As I say, it is a little bit longer today, but stick with it and I hope you learned something. The first step in your model making painting has got to be the priming, and I'm using some air primer from the armypainter here, just some black, and I'm giving it a complete and utter going over. Now moving on to the colours I'm going to use for the skin. These are the armypainter air mega sets for my airbrush, and I'm going to use the skin colour triad here. Starting off with the darkest of the colours, the Nomad Flesh. I'm going to start from the top of the model and work my way down over the black. It's like a zenithal highlighting, using the skin colour to concentrate on where the light would come in and hit the top parts of the skin and miss the bottom parts of the flesh. So you can see there will be shadow under her eyes, under her nose, under her chin, and places where the light wouldn't normally hit it. And that's the whole point of doing it this way. It just adds to the effect of light, and that is a really important effect when you're painting. Now you've got to have a bit of skin colour underneath where the light's not hitting it, so I am going to give it a really light coat underneath the chin as an example, but the majority of the paint is going to come from the top down and hit the face where the sunshine or lighting would naturally hit it. Now when you're happy you've got a nice coat, an even coat and gentle thin layers, move on to the next colour, which is Barbarian Flesh. And what we want to do here is create an interest in the face. We want to make the areas that the sun or the light would hit lighter than the areas that it does not hit. So that would be, for example, the top of the forehead, the nose, the cheeks, the chin. And again, just coming down from the top on the whole with really light strokes and really thin layers. Just pop your paint on there and try not to overdo the colour changes. We don't want to change it from one colour to the next. We want to exannuate the colours as we go through. Now this one is the mid layer in the flesh tone, and we're going to move on to the higher layer after, but here we go. You can see some of the differences in the skin tone there, and again I'm just going to hit it all over to make sure I get a reasonable colour even in the places where the light doesn't hit. Now Wildling Flesh is the lightest skin tone, and this can make her look really anemic and pale, and we don't want to do that. So we just want to give it a little bit of a coating all over. And I always say this in my videos, concentrate on the areas that light will hit. I've said it a few times already, but it is so important to do that. And once you're happy that you've got your colours on, we're going to move on to a couple of washes. Now washes are the paints watered right down. So when we're happy the colours are on, the first wash is going to be this, a purple wash. And here you can see me dropping just one drop of the purple in and watering it right down till it becomes a nice watery wash. And then I'm just going to liberally spray across the model, again from the top down, but I want the purple to just hue the whole of the model really. I'm going to concentrate a little bit more on the eyes and make those areas a little bit darker, but I just want the purple to look all over. And there we go, you can see that purple hue just adds a bit of life to the skin. The next wash that I'm going to use is just a carmine red. Any red will do. Again, one drop, water it right down, and be careful, be really careful with the red. You can easily turn her into a clown. So just light, really light coats just on areas that the red would naturally sit, on the cheeks for an example. But you know, you can hit the forehead a little bit, but don't put too much on. That's not the point of this. It's just to give her a little bit of colour and a little bit of tone. Make sure it's watered down, really light coats. And there we go. And that's the skin tones from the airbrush perspective done and complete. Now moving on to the brush work, and the eyes will come first. And I'm just going to use a blue and a white, and I'm going to mix them together. Now if you look at the whites of an eye, the white of an eye, it's a bit of a trade description act thing. It's not actually white, it's more of a whitey bluey grey, and it's got different colours in it as well, and we need to create the image of being round or oval. And the way we do that is we'll take some blue, we'll take some white, we'll mix it together until we get a really pale blue. I don't want blue, I don't want white, I want a really pale blue. And with that colour on a really fine brush and taking your time, I'm going to paint the insides of the whites of her eyes. Now on smaller models, anyone who watches me paint knows that I do black first and then I'll come over it with the whitey grey. Well, on a model of this size, you don't need to do that. So just your bluey grey first all the way across, and you can just see the edge there on my magnification glasses that you can get in the link below in my description, and they're really handy for things like this. So both eyes are going to get exactly the same treatment with the bluey grey colour. Now when you look at the natural shadows of the eye, like we spoke about the skin and light hitting it, the darker areas of the whites of the eyes will be the top areas of the whites, and the outer edges inner and outer, and that's because the eye curves in all directions. It's a ball, so the top will be darker and the sides will be darker, and we're going to show that reflection in this eye as we move forward, as we're painting the whites of the eye. While that's drying, I'm going to do the lips. So take a red and a skin colour and mix them together. Now we're after a really light shade of pink, but when we do the lips, we're going to be trying to make a couple of colours as we go through. So we're going to start off with the base layer, and there's a couple of things with lips that you just need to be aware of from a shadow perspective. One would be the top lip is generally darker than the bottom, again coming back to the light, and also you're going to see reflections on the lips as well, especially because they're wet, they glisten, so we're going to have reflections on there. So when we're happy with that pink colour that we've got, and we've mixed the skin colour, some red and a little bit of white, I'm just going to take my time and I'm going to draw around and paint around rather the outline of the lips, getting a nice even coat on the bottom layer here. Now you can see straight away that that lip colour works. You know, if you want to make her look like she's got lipstick, kind of like dark lipstick, then you'd use more red. But for a more natural tone with a little bit of lipstick, that's what we're going to use. Now remember we said the top lip is going to be a bit darker. I'm just adding a little bit of red just to make it look a different contrast, and I'm going to paint that colour onto the top lip. So it is in a sense the same colour, just a tiny bit darker. Now I'm mixing all my colours on a wet palette, and if you haven't got one, I do suggest you get one. They're really good for mixing colours, and they'll keep your paints wetter for longer, meaning you can use them for a lot longer than if you just put them on something like a palette. Now that the lips are drying and the eyes should be dry, I'm going to take some white, I'm going to water it down into a wash, and I'm going to go back to the eyes. And remember we said that the centre of the eye will be lighter. Well, I'm just going to paint the centre of the eye white, and I'm going to pull it through into the grey so it blends. So I want the centre to be white, and I want the outer areas and the upper area to be more of a bluey grey white. Just using a wet brush and some lightly wetted paint will do this effect for you, but we'll have to give it a few coats once they dry in between, just to make the whiter look whiter. Back to the lips now, and just mixing that pink colour with some more white just to get it a little bit lighter, so we start to look at the contrast colour on the lip but keeping the same colour. So we're using the same shade, just a little bit lighter. I'm going to add some water into this to make it into a little bit more of a wash, and I'm going to wash it onto the lips. So if we look at this reference picture, you can see that as the bottom lip goes into the mouth, it becomes lighter and lighter, and that's what we're trying to achieve here. So using that shade that's lighter than the original lip colour, I'm just concentrating on the top areas of the bottom lip to make it a lot shinier. And I'm also going to look at the top lip as well, where you can see that the top part of the lip is a little bit lighter again, because that's where the light's going to be hitting it, and that's where I'm going to hit this lighter colour onto it. Now I'm going to remix it a little further, using more white now to make it really light, and adding a little bit more white there on my wet palette. Loving these wet palettes. You've got to get one if you haven't got one, and if you do want one, follow the description link and you can get one there. And I'm going to start to paint the highlighted areas of the lip, moving up to pure white, which is a great way of showing the reflection, and that's where we're aiming for. So a graduation in the colour until we hit white. Don't overdo the white. If you do make a mistake and you think there's too much of something on there, you can always take it back a gradient. The joy with painting is you can always rectify your mistakes to a point. Obviously, if you get a different colour on your skin tone, it's harder to put that back. Okay, so now I've gone to a darker pink. It's the original pink colour I put on the lips, and I'm going to use a really fine tip brush, and I'm going to pull some straight vertical lines down the lip to ridge it out. And by doing that, right across all the shadows, you'll see that the lip starts to take some of its more natural shape. Look at this reference picture to see the vertical lines. Now we've given the lips a little bit of love, the eyes have had time to dry further, so we're going to go back to some wash, some watery white, and I'm going to go back to the whites of the eyes, and I'm going to make sure we give them a really good coating again in the centre of the eye to make sure we bring that white of the eye out. Doing the same to both eyes. Let's have a look at this reference picture and you can see what I mean about the whites of the eyes, in that the outer area and the above area and the bottom area to a point looks grayer than white, or a bluey grey, and that's what we're aiming for here. We're going to move on to a little bit of shadowing now on the face, and I'm taking some of this bugbear brown and I'm going to mix it with a little bit of skin colour. I just want to try to darken the natural skin colour tone a little bit to wash in some shadows, and I'm just going to wet everything a little bit more just so it can wash and not make a definitive line. And I'm just going to put some coats of this above the eye itself, and I'm going to use the wash to mix it into the existing skin tone, and I'm going to do the same over the other eye. Now it's above the eye, as you can see there, and that's what we're aiming for. We're trying to just give that darker, shadowy effect to extenuate further the fact that light is not reaching this place as much as some of the rest of the face. I'm going to do the same again on the bottom. The darker areas also show on the bottom of the eyes. And again, I don't want to make definitive lines. I want to wash it in to try and cascade the colour from a lighter skin colour, a pinky skin colour, down to a darker browny skin colour if I can. Little coats often is the way to do this, just bringing that colour down slowly rather than really quickly. We're coming on now to the pupils, and I'm going to use some abysmal black to do those. Any black will do it. And now things are getting serious in the eye. If we look at this reference picture, dependent on whether the eye is closed or open, will depend on what part or how much of the pupil the black of the eye, the iris of the eye that you actually see. So in this one here, we can see the outer layers of the black, and we can see it goes virtually to the bottom, but not all the way. And that's the kind of picture that I want to try to interpret on Scarlett Johansson here. Now, the important thing with eyes, especially when you're doing them, and I do say this a lot and I kind of repeat myself a little, is we don't want her to be Google-eyed. So make sure you put the pupils and the dark of the eyes in exactly the same place, otherwise she will look a little bit weird. So take your time with this, just get your brush loaded with black and paint that circle in. Again, the top will not be seen, but the bottom of the circle will be seen, and that's the image that we're after here. Now you can add, that's easy to add, it's not so easy to take away. So do a little bit, add a little bit, look at it as a reference, do a little bit, add a little bit, and keep going that way until you reach a stage where you're happy. Now again, you have to be a little bit time consuming on this bit because this is an important bit and you don't want to slip and splodge a great big dollop of black onto your skin tone. So carefully, we'll catch your monkey here. Now I did do quite a lot of backwards and forwards here with this because this is such an integral part of the whole thing. The eyes are the windows to the soul, and it's the first thing that you see in a person or on a model, and you want to make sure that they are absolutely perfect really. So I took my time to try to make sure that I got them as absolutely symmetrical as I could, and I think I got there in the end. You know, I don't think anything is always perfect, and I don't care what anyone says, one eye is probably going to be a little bit different to the other to a slight degree, but as long as they're facing the same way, as long as the irises are exactly the same shape, then I think you're on a winner there. And take your time, and that's what I did, and I think we have achieved. Now with the black in hand and with a really fine brush, I'm going to add some of the darker areas to the eyes. And if we look at the top of the eye, you can see that there's a dark area, and that's what I want to do here. So one line all the way around, kind of like an eyeliner if you like, to the top of the eye, and go from the very top of it all the way around to the other side as well. We want to make it pretty much complete. This is difficult to do. If you slip, you can bodge your skin. If you slip the other way, you can bodge the whites of your eyes. So take your time with this. Use your magnification glasses and get that top eyeliner effect on. You can see the difference between the two eyes there. I'm also going to put some across the bottom as well, but on the whole, this is going to be just the top, and I'm doing the other eye here. Now, you remember you heard me say on smaller models I painted black before I put the white in, and that will do this automatically, but on a model or on a picture of this scale you need to do it afterwards, otherwise it's just going to be too overpowering. Now that adds to the shadow effect when the black goes in, and there will be some natural shadow in there on the eye. I'm going to put some at the bottom as well, and as you can see here, it's a really narrow brush, and I'm trying to use sweeping gentle motions to do this, to try to make the look one look and not start stop jagged approach. Difficult to do this. You might need to practice a few times, but practice does make perfect, and nobody's going to be good at eyes to start with. You really need to keep going and practicing. The more you do, the better you will get. Watch videos, practice and learn. I'm going to be using a pale pink for my next bit, which is going to be the skin colour that you can see, or the flesh colour you can see on the inner part of the eye that you can see here. So the bottom of the eye is going to be pinker than the top. So take a fine brush and pull it across the inner area of the eye. Now you can have some black there as well, but make sure you get the pink on the inner part of the black between the white of the eye and the skin, and pull that through. Now this pink colour makes it look fleshy, it makes it look like the light is reflecting off it, and it's the natural look for an eye. So it's really important that you put this on the bottom. You don't necessarily need this on the top, although you can, but you definitely need it pulled through the bottom. Even if they've got eyeliner on, pull some pink through. Also on the inner aspect of the eye, right in the inner corner, you need some pink in there too. So blobbing a piece of pink in there, and that will make the eye look much more realistic too. So the bottom and the inner and outer edges need to be pink. Now the next stage, we're going to put some colour in the eye, and this is quite an intricate little process. I'm starting off with some green, just some ochre green, but depends on whether the eye would be blue, green, brown, etc. And I'm lightening the colour, so I'm keeping the base colour, but I'm going to add another colour with some white to make it quite light, and I want it to be paler because I want the eye to look darker as it moves through the circle. So you'll see exactly what I mean. So take that fine brush again and just paint some circles around the eye on the inside of it. You can see I've done one there, and I've just literally made a circle within the black, keeping the outer layer of black and an inner layer of green, and that's what I'm doing on this eye now. So it's really important to have that outer layer of black on the iris. Now I couldn't show you the first eye because my big fat head got in the way, so I had to move on to the second eye for you. But you can see what I mean. The outer layer of black, you've got an inner layer of green, and that looks good as it is, but we're going to make it look even better. But first I'm going to leave that green to dry completely. I'm going to take a fine brush and some black, and I'm going to put some shadowing in the top of the eye. You can see where the eye folds. I'm going to put some black in there to make the shadow look even more exaggerated, and that will make the eye look a lot more realistic if you can put some black in there. I did try some brown, but black did the trick. Okay, back to the iris now, and using a lighter or a darker, colour green, and I'm just going to start from the centre, and I'm going to use a fine brush, and I'm going to pull lines out in all directions. So pull them out right the way around, so from the centre down, from the centre right, from the centre up and left, and all angles in between, just to make some lines. And I'm going to put the darker colour on top of the lighter colour, and I'm going to do as many lines as I can. Take your time with this bit. The eyes are going to look really, really good if you can get this part right. So a fine brush, a little bit of paint, don't overload your brush, and just pull those lines out. Now while those lines are drying, I'm using a little bit of brown mixed with a little bit of pinky skin colour, and I've watered it right down to a wash, and I'm just going to paint inside here into the nasolabial folds to give them a little bit of a shadow. Those are the folds either side of the nose that go from the nose down to the mouth, the under part of the chin and the centre of the nose. I'm just going to darken those up with a brown wash to give them a shadowy look, as you can see. I'm also going to use that watery wash under the eyes again, and I'm going to just give them a little bit of another coat of darkening. I want to make them look a little bit darker now the eye colour is in and the eye looks the way it does, just to give it a little bit more realism. Now back to a darker green, and I'm going to do exactly the same that I did before with the very thin brush using a different colour green, and I'm going to pull some straight lines down. So now I'm going to have three different colour lines. I'm going to have a pale, a light and a dark, and they're all moving in the same direction, all next to each other to add to the visual effect of the eye. A little bit on the brush, very, very fine, and those lines continue. As many as you can do. Don't splodge it on there, don't do thick strikes, just get the majority of your paint off and paint them on lines, and that's what we've got now. To add a little bit of a contrast colour in, I'm going to use some of this demonic yellow. Don't worry, we're not going to make her look like she's got liver disease. We're just going to change a little bit of the colour in here. So I'm taking some white, I'm mixing it with that yellow just to pale it up to a lemony kind of colour, a very pale lemon colour. And I'm going to do exactly the same. I'm just going to pull some pale yellow lines through, and you'll be absolutely amazed the difference that this makes to the green. Don't overdo it. We don't want to make her have yellow eyes, and if you do put a little bit too much yellow in, just go back to the green and layer some more of the green in. Okay, so lightly bit on your brush and pull it through, and it's the same process. Thin brush, plenty of lines, take your time. And if we just look once more at the reference picture, look really closely, you'll see little hints of yellow in there, and that's what we want. We want some blues, we want some greens, we want some yellows. Particularly in this eye though, we want some green, because that's what Scarlett Johansson's eyes are. So you'll see me here just putting a little bit more green over the top of the yellow, as I think the yellow was just a little bit too strong, but I still want a background of yellow in there. Now when you're happy with the greens of the eyes being fairly green, we're going to move on to another pivotal stage, and we're going to add the pupils in. Now fine brush, black paint, your magnification goggles on, and drop a tiny dot into the centre of that eye. Make sure it's in the middle, make sure you're happy with where it is. You can always make it a little bit bigger, but you can't really make it smaller after all that work. And once you're happy you've got it in the right place, same again with the other eye, and dollop that pupil in. Try to make sure it's in the middle, make sure it's the same size, and don't get this bit wrong. It's hard. It's really nerve-wracking. If you're worried, you know, you've just got to go for it. There are times when it's going to work and there are times when it's not, but you've just got to drop that dot in and see how you get on. Now, using that fine brush that you've just used for your pupil, you're going to add some eyelashes in. So just curl them up from the outside of the eye and just add them on the outer part to start with. And this will make such a massive difference. So load your brush, a fine brush, wipe the majority of the paint off, and then gentle strokes, just pulling upwards on the outside, moving in, just to add those eyelashes on. Now the eyelashes go right the way around the eye. They're not just in one area, they're on the outside, the inside, the bottom, but we want to make sure that the majority of them is on the outer edge, and that's where it will look more realistic. Just look at the difference that's made to the eye just adding those eyelashes on. Now it's important you use a fine brush, and it's important you get rid of most of that paint and then use the very tip and just curl them. They're not necessarily straight, although you can get away with some of them being straight, but you want to curve them around. There are eyelashes on the bottom too, and exactly the same process there. Just a little bit on your brush and pull them down and away and out and curl them. Bit of a fiddly job, bit time consuming, but pays massive dividends at the end. These are the sort of framing bits of the eyes that we're doing now. You've done the whole of the hard work. We're just making the eye look even better at this time. And there we go. I'm just having a little look to see if there's anything I need to do, anything I need to change. And I'm fairly happy with how that's looking, to be fair. Right, okay, now I'm going back to the pink colour that I used earlier, and I'm just going to go into the very inner parts of the eye, right into the inner section, and I'm going to drop a little dollop in and I'm going to pull it out again into the outer area. So I just want the inside of the eye to look nice and pink. With all the black that went on the eyeliner and with some of the eyelashes, I just want to make sure that that bit is absolutely clean and standing out. And I'm going to call the eyes done, bar a little bit of varnish at the end, which I'm going to pop in, which I didn't catch on video, but I'm going to varnish them. I'm going to move on now to the eyebrows, and I'm using a little bit of brown on a fine brush, and make sure you don't add a caterpillar here. The Wicked model that I'm using has got the eyebrows already there, and you can see what to follow, which is great. So I'm using a really fine brush, and I'm going to put individual strokes in, following the shape of the eyebrows to draw the eyebrows on. Make sure you don't load your brush too much. Make sure you don't draw this on horizontally. We don't want to do that. We want to use fine strokes, and we want to build it. Now, this isn't going to be the last layer I'm putting on the eyebrows, but this is the base brown layer. And do the left and the right together, so that if you do change colour, which we will do in a bit, you're going to have the same each side. So take your time with this bit, fine brush, follow the pre-existing eyebrow, and away you go. Now if it's not pre-existing, that's really nerve-wracking. You're going to have to look at some reference pictures and try to do the best that you can. Now take some black once your brown is on, really fine again, and then this time I'm going to go in the opposite direction to the brown, and you'll really see the difference here. The black makes those eyebrows really stand off, and what we're doing is we're framing the eyes. The eyelashes frame the eyes to a point, but the eyebrows just do that final job. And again, take your time with this. It's really not worth rushing. This is one of those jobs that needs to be done right, because if these are wrong, they will stick out like a sore thumb. So opposite direction to your brown, little strokes, and just follow the shape of the eyebrows until you're happy. Now once you've got the base shape on there, you can use a fine line as well, and just go horizontally a few times just to build up the thickness of the eyebrow. Again, a hair with Scarlett Johansson as a Black Widow, it's more of a reddy brown, but I don't want to do that to the eyebrows. The eyebrows need to be a blacky brown colour. And I just want to give them a little bit more of a coat, especially on the edges there, that I just want to make sure that you can see them. So I'm pulling a couple of lines horizontally, they're going against the grain just to make them stand out for that final touch. And I think you'll agree, she's starting to look really nice, isn't she? Wonderful. And there we go, up close and personal with Scarlett. the Black Widow. Now I am going to put some varnish on the eyes and some varnish on the lips, but I haven't caught that on video, but you'll see that in the end result. And I'm also going to do the hair now. I'm not going to do the whole of the hair, I'm just going to show you it as a bit of a frame. So I'm using some red, I'm using some lava orange, and I'm going to mix those together. Now initially I thought that will do it, but that was a little bit too orange, so I've added a little bit of brown, and I'm happy with the colour that is. So once I've got that colour now, I just want to frame this for you, so I'm just going to pop a few bits around just so you can see what she will look like with her hair in place. I hope you found something useful in this video, and I hope I've taught you something. This whole process of what we do with our models is a learning curve, and I really do hope you've picked something up from this today. Now if you like what you see, please subscribe to the channel, that really does help me. Also, if you want to buy some of these paints, you can get them from the description, from the affiliate link, and a little bit comes back to this channel, which also supports me. So I'm going to call this bit of the video done. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.